The bullet was 3 inches from Tae-jun's skull when she appeared. 6 months ago, this woman couldn't walk upstairs without losing her breath. 6 months ago, Tae-jun married her to stop a gang war and promised himself he'd never look at her twice. Tonight, she just saved his life. And he had no idea who she was. If you want to see how a woman went from being invisible to unstoppable, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will change how you see transformation forever. But let's go back to where it all started, because this story begins with blood, power, and a wedding that nobody wanted. Los Angeles, Koreatown. If you knew where to look, you'd see that beneath the neon signs and barbecue restaurants, there was a war happening. Not the kind that makes the news. The kind that leaves bodies in alleys and makes entire blocks go silent after midnight. Tae-jun Chen ran the West Side, 32 years old, Korean-American, and ruthless in ways that made even his own men nervous. He'd inherited the syndicate from his father 3 years ago, and in that time, he'd doubled their territory, tripled their revenue, and earned a reputation for being absolutely merciless. Designer suits, cold eyes, and a voice that could make grown men confess their sins. The Jackson family ran the East Side. Marcus Jackson was old school, a black kingpin who'd controlled the drug trade in East LA for 20 years. He was smart, connected, and just as ruthless as Tae-jun. Their territories had coexisted peacefully for years, with a thin line of neutral ground between them, until Jackson's nephew got ambitious. It started with a shipment hijacking, then a warehouse fire, then 3 of Tae-jun's men turned up dead in a shipping container. Tae-jun retaliated. Jackson retaliated back. Within 2 months, Koreatown was a war zone. Civilians were getting caught in crossfire. The police were circling. The feds were building cases. Both organizations were hemorrhaging money and manpower. It was Marcus Jackson who proposed the truce. Tae-jun sat in his office at the back of his legitimate business, a high-end Korean steakhouse called Hanul. The walls were decorated with traditional Korean art worth more than most people's houses. His second-in-command, Danny Kim, stood by the door. "He wants a meeting," Danny said, reading from his phone. "Neutral ground. Just him and you. Says he has a proposal that ends this." Tae-jun didn't look up from the contract he was reviewing. "Tell him I'm listening. He wants it in person. Then he can come here." Danny shifted his weight. "Boss, he's offering a white flag. We should hear him out. We've lost 15 men in 2 months. The cops raided 3 of our operations last week. This war is killing us." Tae-jun finally looked up. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "Set it up." "But Danny, if this is a setup, I want you to burn every single Jackson property to the ground. Understood?" "Understood." 3 days later, Marcus Jackson walked into Hanul with 2 bodyguards. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, with gray in his beard and the kind of presence that commanded respect. Tae-jun met him in a private dining room, Danny and 1 other guard present. The 2 men sat across from each other. No handshake, no pleasantries. Marcus spoke first. "We're destroying each other. Your nephew started this, and I put a bullet in his head last week for it." Marcus's face didn't change. "This war serves neither of us. The feds are building RICO cases against both our organizations. We keep this up, we'll both be in federal prison by Christmas." Tae-jun leaned back in his chair. "So you want peace?" "I want an alliance. I don't need partners." "You need to stop losing men and money." Marcus pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "I'm proposing we unite our organizations. Not a merger, an alliance. We divide LA properly, share certain operations, and present a united front against the cartels trying to move in from the south." Tae-jun didn't touch the folder. "And why would I trust you?" "Because I'm offering you insurance." Marcus leaned forward. "A marriage alliance. Old school, I know, but it works. My daughter marries into your family. Our bloodlines connect. Breaking the peace means breaking family. Even in our world, that means something. You want me to marry your daughter. I want our families bound by blood and law." Tae-jun studied the older man's face. "You have 3 daughters. Which one?" "Tiana, my youngest." Tae-jun knew of Marcus's daughters. The oldest, Keisha, was a lawyer who distanced herself from the family business. The middle daughter, Nicole, was married to a tech entrepreneur in San Francisco. But Tiana? Taejun had never even seen a photo of her. Why her? Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. She's available. And she understands the life. There was something Marcus wasn't saying, but Taejun didn't care enough to dig. He opened the folder. The proposal was detailed, specific, and actually, smart. Territory divisions that made sense. Revenue sharing that benefited both sides. Joint operations that would crush their competition. If I agree to this, Taejun said slowly, the marriage is a formality. I'm not interested in playing house. Tiana understands what this is. When? 2 weeks. Enough time to draw up the contracts and make the arrangements. Taejun closed the folder. He thought about his father, who died in a similar gang war 5 years ago. He thought about the 15 men he'd buried in the last 2 months. He thought about the feds circling like sharks. One condition, Taejun said. If either family breaks this alliance, the other has the right to complete retaliation. No mercy, no negotiations. Marcus nodded. Agreed. They shook hands. The deal was done. Danny waited until Marcus left before speaking. Boss, you're really going to marry a woman you've never met? Taejun stood and straightened his tie. I'm going to sign a piece of paper that stops a war and saves our organization. What the woman looks like is irrelevant. But he was wrong about that. The wedding was arranged for a Saturday evening at a luxury hotel in downtown LA. It wasn't a celebration, it was a business transaction with witnesses. Around 100 people attended, split evenly between the Chen and Jackson organizations. The atmosphere was tense, with men from both sides eyeing each other with barely concealed suspicion. Taejun arrived in a black Tom Ford tuxedo, his hair slicked back, looking every bit the powerful crime boss he was. He'd seen the wedding as another meeting to get through. Sign the papers, say the words, shake hands, go home. He stood at the altar with the officiant, Danny beside him as best man. The traditional music started, and the doors at the back of the room opened, and Tiana Jackson walked in. Taejun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe disappointment. He wasn't sure. Tiana was a plus-size black woman, probably around 5'6", wearing a white wedding dress that clearly had been custom-made for her curves. She was beautiful in an objective sense, with smooth dark skin, full lips, and intelligent eyes. But she was easily over 250 pounds. And she walked down the aisle with her head slightly down, her shoulders hunched, like she was trying to make herself smaller. She looked terrified. When she reached the altar, she finally looked up at Taejun. Her eyes were brown and wide, and in them, he saw resignation. She knew what this was. She knew he didn't want her. She knew she was a bargaining chip. The ceremony was brief. They exchanged vows that meant nothing. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Taejun gave her the briefest, most perfunctory kiss possible. Her lips were soft, and she smelled like vanilla and fear. The reception was equally mechanical. They sat at a head table, barely speaking. When they did speak, it was surface-level pleasantries. "The food is good," she said quietly. "It's catered from Hanul," he replied without looking at her. "Your restaurant?" "Yes." Silence. Marcus Jackson approached their table with a whiskey in hand. He clapped Taejun on the shoulder. "Welcome to the family, son." Taejun gave a tight smile. "Thank you, sir." Marcus looked at his daughter. "Tiana, you look beautiful." She nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Thank you, Daddy." There was tension there, old and deep. Marcus lingered for a moment, then walked away to greet other guests. Tiana pushed food around her plate. "I know this isn't what you wanted." Taejun finally looked at her. Really looked at her. She was staring at her plate, her shoulders still hunched, her body language screaming discomfort. "This is business," he said simply. "Nothing personal." "Right." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Business. I have a house in the Hollywood Hills. You'll have your own wing, your own space. I don't expect anything from you except to maintain appearances when necessary." She nodded slowly. "Okay. Do you have any questions?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Are you going to be cruel to me?" The question surprised him. He frowned. No, I'm not interested in cruelty, just distance. Distance I can do, she said. And for the first time he heard something other than fear in her voice. Relief, maybe. The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Photos were taken. Toasts were made. Deals were discussed in corners. And through it all, Taijun and Tiana sat beside each other like strangers, which is exactly what they were. When it was finally over, they left in separate cars. Tiana would move into his house the next day. As Taijun drove home alone, Danny called him. Well? Danny asked. Well, what? Your wife, boss. She's not what I expected. She's a signature on a contract, Danny. That's all she needs to be. Right, of course. A pause. She seemed nice, though. Nice doesn't win wars, Taejun said, and hung up. He told himself he felt nothing about the situation. No disappointment, no regret, no guilt. It was just business. But that night, alone in his bed, he found himself thinking about the look in her eyes when she'd asked if he was going to be cruel to her. Like she'd expected cruelty. Like she was used to it. He pushed the thought away and went to sleep. Tiana moved into Taijun's house the next afternoon. The house was massive, a modern architectural masterpiece built into the Hollywood Hills with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It had 6 bedrooms, a gym, a home theater, an infinity pool, and enough space for 10 people to live without ever seeing each other. Taejun showed her to the East Wing personally, his manner businesslike and distant. This is your bedroom, he said, opening a door to a spacious suite with its own bathroom and balcony. The closet is already stocked with clothes in your size. If you need anything else, tell Maria, the housekeeper. She comes Monday through Friday. Tiana stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The room was beautiful, decorated in soft grays and whites, but it felt sterile, like a hotel. Thank you, she said quietly. The kitchen is fully stocked. Cook whatever you want, or order in. I'm rarely here for meals. Where do you eat? The office, mostly, or out. She nodded, hugging herself. And what do I do? During the day, I mean. Taejun looked at her, confused by the question. Whatever you want, this is your home now. Do you want me to, I don't know, manage the household or something? Entertain? I'm not sure what's expected. Nothing is expected. You're free to do as you please, as long as you're available for public appearances when needed. Charity galas, business dinners, that sort of thing. So I just exist? He frowned. Is that a problem? No, she said quickly. No, I just wanted to understand. There was an awkward silence. I'll let you settle in, Taejun said, turning to leave. Taejun? He paused, looking back. Do you want me to call you something else, like honey, or… She trailed off, looking embarrassed. Taejun is fine. We're not playing pretend when we're alone. She nodded, and he left. Tiana stood in the beautiful, empty room and felt more alone than she'd ever felt in her life. The first week was disorienting. Tiana woke up each morning in the massive house, ate breakfast alone, and tried to figure out what to do with herself. She explored every room, finding spaces that were clearly never used. She swam in the pool once, but it felt weird being in a bikini with the gardeners around. She watched TV in the theater room, read books from Taijun's extensive library, and tried to make the space feel like home. But it didn't. It felt like a prison. A beautiful, luxurious prison. Taejun kept his word about distance. She rarely saw him. He left before she woke up, and came home after she'd gone to bed. Sometimes she'd hear his footsteps in the other wing, or the sound of him on a phone call in his office. But they didn't interact. The few times they did cross paths, it was awkward. One morning, she came down to the kitchen at 6 a.m., unable to sleep, and found him making coffee in a t-shirt and sweatpants. It was the most casual she'd ever seen him. Sorry, she said immediately. I didn't know you were here. He glanced at her. It's your house, too. Right. She hovered by the doorway. I'll just… Coffee's fresh if you want some. She approached carefully, like he might bolt. Thank you. They stood in silence while she poured herself a cup. She could feel him looking at her, and she suddenly became hyper-aware of what she was wearing. An oversized t-shirt and pajama pants? No makeup. Her natural hair in a bonnet. "I'm sorry," she said. "I look a mess." "It's 6 in the morning. Why would I care how you look?" She didn't have an answer to that. She took her coffee and started to leave. "Tiana." She turned back. "You apologize a lot," he observed. "Why?" She blinked. I don't know. Habit, I guess." He studied her for a moment, then nodded and went back to his phone. Conversation over. That brief exchange stuck with her all day. "You apologize a lot." Did she? She thought about it and realized he was right. She apologized for existing in spaces, for speaking, for breathing too loud. When had she become this person? By the second week, Tiana started noticing things about Taejun, even though they barely interacted. He was obsessively organized. Everything in his spaces had a place. He worked constantly, often taking calls at midnight or earlier. He drank his coffee black, no sugar. He had nightmares sometimes. She could hear him through the walls. And he was lonely, even though he'd never admit it. She started small. She noticed his housekeeper, Maria, mentioning he never ate proper meals, just takeout or protein bars. So Tiana started cooking. Not for him, specifically. Just cooking because she was bored, and it gave her something to do. Korean food, mostly. Bibimbap, kimchi jjigae, bulgogi. Her mother had been Korean American, had taught her before she died when Tiana was 12. Cooking these dishes made her feel close to a woman she barely remembered. She'd leave the food in containers in the fridge with simple notes. Bulgogi. Microwave 2 minutes. She never said anything to Taejun about it, but the containers started coming back empty. One evening, she found a note on the counter in his sharp, precise handwriting. The kimchi jjigae was good. She smiled. It was the tiniest crack in the wall between them. She started leaving food more regularly, and he started leaving notes. Not conversations, just acknowledgments. "Thank you. This was excellent. Once, just, more of this, please." It wasn't much, but it was something. In the third week, she wandered into his office by accident, looking for a book she'd been reading. She knocked, heard nothing, and opened the door. The office was chaos, papers everywhere, files stacked precariously, coffee cups on every surface. It looked like a tornado had hit. She stood there, staring, until she heard footsteps behind her. "Can I help you?" She spun around. Taejun stood there in a suit, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry. I was looking for my book. I didn't mean to." "It's fine." He moved past her into the office. "What book?" "Never mind. I'll find it later." He looked around his office, seeming to see the mess for the first time. "It's not usually this bad." "You're busy," she said diplomatically. "I'm reorganizing our entire filing system. It's a nightmare." She hesitated. I could help if you want. I used to work as an administrative assistant before all this." He looked at her, surprised. "You worked?" "Of course I worked. I wasn't just sitting around eating bonbons all day." There was an edge to her voice that surprised them both. His lips twitched, almost a smile. "I'll keep that in mind." She left, but the next evening he found her in the kitchen. "I'm taking you up on your offer," he said without preamble. "The office, if you're serious." "I'm serious. It'll take a few days. I have nothing but time." And so, they started working together. It was strange at first being in the same room, focused on a task. But Tiana was good at organization, methodical and efficient. She created systems, labeled everything, turned chaos into order. Taejun watched her work with growing respect. She didn't complain, didn't ask unnecessary questions, and caught mistakes he'd missed. "You're good at this," he said on the third day. She looked up from the filing cabinet. "Thank you." "Why did you stop working?" Her hands stilled. "My father didn't think it was appropriate. Said I should focus on the family." "Doing what?" "Being available for this, I guess. Being a bargaining chip." Taejun frowned. "That's a waste." She laughed, bitter. "That's what I said. They worked in silence for a while. Then Taejun asked, "What did you want to do?" Before all this. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "I wanted to be a teacher," she finally said. "Elementary school. I love kids. I love watching them learn things, seeing their faces light up when something clicks." "Why didn't you?" "My father said no. Said it didn't fit the family image." Taejun set down the file he was holding. "Your father is a fool." She looked at him, shocked. "You'd be a good teacher," he continued, his voice matter of fact. "You're patient, organized, and you clearly care. Those are the things that matter." Tears pricked her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time someone had said something kind about her dreams instead of dismissing them. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and went back to work, not realizing he'd just given her the first real gift she'd received in years. By the end of the month, something had shifted. They weren't friends, exactly, but they weren't quite strangers anymore either. They existed in the same space without tension. Sometimes they'd eat dinner together, talking about neutral topics like books or movies. He learned she was funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard. She learned he was more than the cold crime boss, that he had layers. But there was still distance. Always distance. Until the night everything changed. It was 2 in the morning when Tiana heard it, a sound from Taejun's wing. Not a nightmare this time. Something worse. She found him in his bathroom, leaning over the sink, coughing blood. "Oh my God!" She rushed to him. "What happened? Should I call 911? "No." He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals, no doctors. You're coughing up blood. It's not as bad as it looks." But his face was pale, his hands shaking. "What happened?" "Got hit during a meeting tonight. Cracked rib, probably." "You need medical attention." "I have a doctor who handles these things quietly. I'll call him in the morning." "Taejun?" "I'm fine, Tiana." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw past the armor. He was in pain, exhausted, and trying desperately to stay in control. "Let me help," she said softly. "You can't." "Yes, I can. Come on." She helped him to his bed, ignoring his protests. She brought him water, painkillers, and a bowl in case he threw up. She sat with him until the painkillers kicked in and his breathing evened out. As he drifted off, he mumbled, "Why are you doing this?" "Because someone should," she said simply. When his doctor came the next morning, a discreet man who asked no questions, he confirmed it was a cracked rib and severe bruising. Nothing life-threatening, but painful. Taejun needed rest. For the next week, Tiana took care of him. She brought him meals, changed his bandages, made sure he wasn't overdoing it. He hated being weak, hated needing help, but he was too injured to refuse. They talked more during that week than they had in the entire month before. She learned about his father, who'd been killed in a gang war. About the pressure he felt to live up to that legacy. About the loneliness of being the man everyone feared but no one knew. He learned about her mother, who'd died of cancer when Tiana was 12. About growing up in her father's world, always feeling like a disappointment because she wasn't interested in the business. About her struggles with food, with self-worth, with feeling invisible. "You're not invisible," Taejun said one evening. They were in his room, her sitting in a chair beside his bed, him propped up on pillows. "Yes, I am," she said sadly. "I've been invisible my whole life. To my father, to my sisters, to you. I see you." She looked at him, surprised. "I see you," he repeated. "You're intelligent, capable, kind. You care about people even when they don't deserve it. You make the best kimchi jjigae I've ever had. You reorganized my disaster of an office in 3 days. You're sitting here taking care of a man who's done nothing to earn your kindness. I see all of that." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Why are you saying this?" "Because it's true." She wiped her eyes. "I'm fat, Taejun. I saw your face at the wedding. I know I'm not what you wanted." "You're right. You're not what I wanted." She flinched, but he continued. "I didn't want anyone. I wanted to be alone, to not need anyone. But you've been here. And you've been real. That matters more than I thought it would. I don't understand. He reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he'd touched her since their wedding kiss. Neither do I, he admitted. But I'm starting to think this arrangement might not be as terrible as I thought. She laughed through her tears. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. I'm working on it. They sat like that for a long time, hands intertwined, something shifting between them. But that night, alone in her room, Tiana looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. She saw the weight she'd carried for years, emotional and physical. She saw the woman who'd learned to make herself small, to apologize for existing, to accept being a bargaining chip. And she decided she was done. Not for Tae-jun, not to be what he wanted, but for herself. She was done being invisible. Tiana started small. She'd always been an emotional eater, using food to cope with stress, sadness, loneliness. She'd tried diets before, but they never stuck because she was doing them for the wrong reasons. To please her father, to fit in, to be acceptable. This time was different. This time, she was doing it for herself. She started by seeing a therapist, something she'd wanted to do for years. She found Dr. Sarah Chen, a Korean-American therapist who specialized in trauma and self-worth. Their sessions were hard, often painful, but necessary. Why do you apologize so much? Dr. Chen asked in their third session. Because I take up too much space, Tiana said automatically, then stopped. God, I actually believe that, don't I? Do you? I've been told my whole life that I'm too much. Too big, too loud, too emotional, too everything. So I learned to make myself smaller, to apologize for existing. And how's that working out for you? Tiana laughed bitterly. I married a man who didn't want me to stop a gang war. So not great. What do you want, Tiana? Not what your father wants. Not what Tae-jun wants. What do you want? It was the first time anyone had asked her that question. I want to matter, she whispered. I want to be strong. I want to look in the mirror and like what I see. I want to stop apologizing for being alive. Then let's work on that. Therapy became her anchor. She worked through years of emotional baggage, learned coping mechanisms that didn't involve food, and slowly started to rebuild her sense of self. But she wanted more than emotional strength. She wanted physical strength, too. She found a gym in West Hollywood that offered early morning classes. She started going at 5 a.m. before Tae-jun woke up, not wanting to explain herself. The first day was humiliating. She could barely do a single push-up. She couldn't run for more than 30 seconds. Her body protested every movement. But she came back the next day, and the next. She hired a personal trainer, Marcus, no relation to her father, a former Marine who took one look at her and said, "You want this, or are you just playing around?" "I want this," she said firmly. "Then let's work." He didn't coddle her. He pushed her. Hard. But never beyond what she could handle. He taught her about nutrition, about fueling her body instead of punishing it. He taught her that strength wasn't about the number on the scale, but about what her body could do. "You're not trying to be skinny," he told her. "You're trying to be strong. There's a difference." She loved that difference. She started changing her relationship with food. Instead of restriction and guilt, she focused on nourishment. She still cooked the Korean food she loved, but she paid attention to portions, to balance, to how different foods made her feel. The weight started coming off, slowly. 5 pounds, then 10, then 15. But more importantly, she started feeling different, stronger, more capable, more alive. She kept it secret from Tae-jun. He'd recovered from his injury and gone back to his normal schedule, barely seeing her. She didn't tell him about therapy, about the gym, about any of it. This wasn't for him. This was for her. By the 3rd month, she'd lost 30 pounds. Her clothes fit differently. Her face was slimmer. But the real changes were internal. She walked differently, with her shoulders back instead of hunched. She made eye contact. She stopped apologizing for everything. One morning, she came home from the gym and found Tae-jun in the kitchen, which was unusual. He looked at her in her workout clothes, sweat-soaked and exhausted, and frowned. Where have you been? Gym, she said, grabbing a water bottle. Since when do you go to the gym? Since 3 months ago. He studied her, and she could see him noticing the changes. Why didn't you say anything? Didn't think I needed to. You don't tell me where you go. That's different. Why? Because your business is important and mine isn't? There was an edge to her voice, a confidence that hadn't been there before. He blinked, clearly not expecting the pushback. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Nothing. Never mind. She smiled slightly, enjoying catching him off balance. I'm going to shower. As she walked past him, he caught her arm gently. Tiana. She turned. You look good, he said quietly. Healthy? Thank you. Are you happy? The question surprised her. I'm getting there. He nodded and let her go. After that, he started paying more attention. He noticed when she turned down certain foods, when she woke up early, when she came home sweaty and exhausted, but smiling. He didn't comment, but he watched. One evening, he came home early and found her in the gym. Yes, his house had a gym that she'd never used before. She was with her trainer doing a brutal circuit of kettlebell swings, burpees, and mountain climbers. Marcus saw Tae-jun first and nodded. Boss? Tiana turned, surprised. Oh, hi. Don't stop on my account, Tae-jun said, leaning against the doorframe. She glanced at Marcus, who shrugged. She continued her set, hyper-aware of Tae-jun watching. When she finished, gasping for breath, Marcus handed her a towel. Good work today, Tiana. You're getting strong. Thanks, Marcus. The trainer nodded at Tae-jun and left, leaving them alone. You brought your trainer here? Tae-jun asked. Is that a problem? You said I could use the gym. No, it's fine. I'm just surprised. Why? I don't know. I guess I didn't realize how serious you were about this. She wiped sweat from her face. I'm very serious. I can see that. He moved closer. How much weight have you lost? 40 pounds. His eyebrows rose. 40? And I can deadlift 170, run 3 miles without stopping, and do 50 push-ups. Want me to prove it? He smiled, a real smile this time. I believe you. Do you? She challenged. Because 3 months ago, you wouldn't have noticed if I disappeared entirely. His smile faded. That's not true. Isn't it? They stared at each other, tension crackling between them. You're right, he said finally. I was an asshole. I treated you like you didn't matter. I'm sorry. It was the first time he'd apologized to her. Why the change of heart? She asked. Because you're changing right in front of me, and I'm starting to realize I've been blind. To what? To you. He took another step closer. To who you are, to what you're capable of. To the fact that I married someone extraordinary and almost missed it entirely. Her heart was pounding, and not from the workout. Tae-jun, I know you're not doing this for me, and I respect that. But I want you to know. I see you now, and I'm impressed as hell. She didn't know what to say. He stepped back. I'll let you finish your workout. As he left, she stood there, trembling, not from exhaustion, from something else entirely. After that conversation, something changed between them. The distance was still there, but it felt different. Charged. Tae-jun started coming home earlier. They'd have dinner together, talking about their days. He told her about business deals, about problems with rival organizations. She told him about her therapy sessions, about her fitness goals, about the books she was reading. They laughed together. They debated politics and movies, and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. They existed in the same space comfortably, naturally, and slowly, carefully, they became friends. But there was something else building beneath the friendship. An awareness. A tension that neither of them acknowledged but both of them felt. Tiana noticed the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he'd find excuses to be in the same room. The way his hand would brush hers when he passed her something. Tae-jun noticed the way she smiled at him now. Genuine and warm. The way she'd lean in when they talked. Close enough that he could smell her perfume. The way she challenged him, pushed back, made him think. 4 months into her transformation, they attended their first public event together since the wedding, a charity gala for a children's hospital. One of those events where crime bosses pretended to be legitimate businessmen and everyone pretended not to know the truth. Tiana had bought a new dress, a form-fitting black number that showed off the 70 pounds she'd lost. She'd had her hair and makeup done professionally. When she walked down the stairs that evening, Tae-jun actually stopped mid-conversation with Danny, his mouth falling open slightly. "Holy shit," Danny muttered. Tae-jun shot him a look that could kill, then turned to Tiana. "You look beautiful." She smiled, nervous. "Thank you." "Too much?" "Not even close." At the gala, heads turned when they walked in. Tiana wasn't the timid, invisible woman anymore. She walked with confidence, her hand in the crook of Tae-jun's arm, smiling and making conversation with ease. Marcus Jackson was there with his new wife. When he saw Tiana, his eyes widened. "Baby girl," he said, approaching them. "Is that you?" "Hi, Daddy," Tiana said coolly. "You look different." "I've lost some weight." "More than some. You look good. Real good." He turned to Tae-jun. "You been treating her right?" "Better than you did," Tiana said before Tae-jun could answer. Marcus's face darkened. "Watch your mouth, girl." "Or what? You'll marry me off to someone else?" She smiled sweetly. "Oh wait, you already did that." Tae-jun's hand tightened on her waist, a gesture of support. Marcus glared at both of them, then stalked off. "That was bold," Tae-jun murmured. "I'm done being afraid of him," Tiana said. "I'm done being afraid of everyone." He looked at her with something that might have been pride, or admiration, or something deeper. "Good." Throughout the evening, Tae-jun found himself increasingly possessive. Men looked at Tiana, really looked at her, and he hated it. When one business associate's hand lingered too long on her lower back during a conversation, Tae-jun stepped in, pulling her close. "She's married," he said flatly. The man backed off, hands raised. "No offense, Chen." When they were alone for a moment, Tiana raised an eyebrow. "Jealous?" "Yes," he said bluntly. She blinked, surprised by his honesty. "I know I have no right to be," he continued. "I know this marriage was supposed to be a formality, but somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like business." "Tae-jun, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." But before she could respond, Danny approached with urgent news. There was a situation at one of their warehouses. Tae-jun needed to leave immediately. "I'm sorry," he said to Tiana. "Danny will take you home." "Be careful," she said softly. He nodded and left, and she watched him go with a feeling she couldn't quite name in her chest. The next morning, Tiana made a decision. She'd been getting stronger physically, but she wanted more. She wanted to be able to protect herself, to never feel helpless again. She asked Marcus, her trainer, about self-defense. "I know a guy," he said. "Former Special Forces. He teaches Krav Maga. Very practical. Very effective. Set it up." 2 days later, she met instructor James Park, a compact Korean man in his 50s with scars on his knuckles and eyes that had seen too much. "Why do you want to learn this?" he asked. "Because I'm married to a dangerous man in a dangerous world and I refuse to be a liability." He smiled. "Good answer. Let's begin." Krav Maga was brutal. It was designed for real-world violence, not sport. It taught her how to use her opponent's strength against them, how to target vulnerable points, how to react instinctively. She threw herself into it with the same intensity she'd brought to everything else. She came home with bruises, split knuckles, and a fierce satisfaction. Tae-jun noticed. Of course he noticed. "What happened to your hand?" he asked one evening, catching her wrist gently. "Training," she said. "What kind of training leaves you bruised like this?" "The kind that teaches me how to break someone's nose if they grab me." His eyes darkened. "Tiana, I'm not helpless anymore, Tae-jun. I refuse to be." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then, "Show me." "What?" "Show me what you've learned." They went to his gym. She demonstrated a few basic moves, and he watched intently. "Try it on me," he said. "I don't want to hurt you." He laughed. "Trust me, you won't." She grabbed him the way Instructor Park had taught her, went for a wrist lock. Tae-jun countered smoothly, clearly trained himself. They went back and forth, and she realized he was testing her, seeing what she knew. Finally, she managed to get him in a hold that would have been devastating if she'd followed through. "Good," he said, breathing hard. "Really good." They were close, too close, both breathing heavily. His hands were on her waist where he'd caught himself from falling. Her hands were on his shoulders. "Tae-jun," she whispered. He kissed her. It wasn't like their wedding kiss, perfunctory and meaningless. This was real, intense, desperate. His hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck. They kissed like they'd been starving for each other, which maybe they had been. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm not good at this," he said. "At feelings, at relationships, at any of it. Neither am I. But I want to try. With you. If you want that." "I want that," she breathed. "I want you." He kissed her again, softer this time, tender. "Then you have me." That night, their marriage became real in every sense of the word. And for the first time in her life, Tiana felt truly seen, truly wanted, truly loved. The next 2 months were the happiest of Tiana's life. She and Tae-jun weren't pretending anymore. They were actually married, actually building something real together. She continued her training, now up to 95 pounds lost and able to hold her own in a fight. Tae-jun taught her about his business, trusting her with information he'd never shared before. She helped him strategize, using her intelligence and fresh perspective to solve problems. They were partners, equals. But not everyone was happy about the alliance between the Chen and Jackson organizations. Marcus Jackson had underestimated Tiana. He'd thought marrying her off would make her more controllable, more useful. Instead, she'd become independent, powerful, and worst of all, loyal to Tae-jun instead of her own blood. And he hated it. He started planning, quietly, carefully. He brought in his most trusted men, the ones who'd been with him since the beginning. "The alliance was a mistake," he told them. "Chen is getting too powerful, and my daughter's forgotten where she comes from. We need to remind them both who really runs this city." His plan was simple but effective. Stage an attack on one of Chen's operations, make it look like a rival cartel. When Chen retaliated against the cartel, Jackson would swoop in, take over Chen's destabilized territory, and eliminate Tae-jun in the chaos. And Tiana? She'd come back to the family. Or she'd be collateral damage. Marcus didn't care which. The attack came on a Tuesday night. One of Tae-jun's primary warehouses, the one that handled most of their import operations, was hit by a team of armed men. They killed 3 guards, stole $500,000 in product, and burned the building to the ground. Tae-jun got the call at 2 a.m. He was in bed with Tiana, and she woke when he bolted upright. "What's wrong?" "The Maple Street warehouse. It's gone." His voice was deadly calm, which scared her more than anger would have. "Gone how?" "Burned. People dead. Product stolen." He was already getting dressed, making calls. "I'm coming with you," Tiana said, getting up. "No. Stay here where it's safe." "Tae-jun, this is not a discussion." He rarely raised his voice to her, and she flinched. He saw it, closed his eyes, and softened. "Please, just stay here. I need to know you're safe." She nodded reluctantly. "Be careful." He kissed her forehead and left. At the warehouse, it was chaos. Police, fire department, his men trying to salvage what they could. Danny met him with a grim expression. 3 dead, boss. Chen, Park, and Martinez. All good men. Who did this? We found cartel markings. Los Zetas looks like. Tae-jun's jaw clenched. Los Zetas was a Mexican cartel that had been trying to move into LA for months. He'd rebuffed them multiple times. This was their response. "Find them," he said coldly. "All of them. I want everyone who was involved." "Boss, if we go to war with the cartel?" "I don't care. They killed our people. We respond." Over the next week, Taijun mobilized his entire organization. He hit Los Zetas operations up and down the coast. He sent a message. Mess with the Chen family, and you don't survive. But he was so focused on the cartel that he didn't see the real threat. Marcus Jackson was moving his pieces into place. Tiana sensed something was wrong. Her father had called her 3 times in the past week, which was unusual. Each time he'd asked probing questions about Taijun's operations, his plans, his vulnerabilities. Why does he want to know this? She asked Taijun one evening. He was exhausted, running on caffeine and rage. What? My father. He keeps calling, asking weird questions about your business. Probably just checking on the alliance. Don't worry about it. But she did worry. Something felt off. She decided to do something she'd never done before. She called her sister Keisha, the lawyer who'd distanced herself from the family. Tiana? What's wrong? I need to ask you something. Has Dad said anything about Taejun? About the alliance? Keisha was quiet for a long moment. Tiana, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't say where you heard it. Okay. Dad's been meeting with some of his old crew, the ones from before the truce. I've heard rumors he's planning something. Tiana's blood went cold. Planning what? I don't know, but be careful. You know how Dad gets when he feels disrespected. And you choosing Taejun over the family? He sees that as the ultimate disrespect. After hanging up, Tiana immediately called Taejun. He didn't answer. She tried Danny. No answer. Something was very wrong. She grabbed her phone and keys, about to leave, when the front door burst open. 3 men she didn't recognize stormed in, guns drawn. Mrs. Chen, one of them said, "You're coming with us." Her training kicked in. She grabbed a lamp and threw it at the first man, then went for the second with a knee to the groin. But the third grabbed her from behind, and she felt a needle pierce her neck. The world went fuzzy, then black. Tiana woke up in darkness, her head pounding. She was tied to a chair in what felt like an empty warehouse. As her eyes adjusted, she saw her father standing in front of her. "Daddy?" Her voice was hoarse. "You're awake. Good. What's happening? Why?" "You've been a disappointment, Tiana," Marcus said calmly. "I gave you a simple job. Marry Chen. Maintain the alliance. Keep me informed. Instead, you fell for him. You chose him over your own family." Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. "You set this up. The warehouse attack. You're trying to destroy the alliance." "The alliance was always temporary. Chen has gotten too powerful, too comfortable. I needed him distracted. Weak. And you, my dear daughter, are the perfect bait. He'll kill you for this." Marcus smiled. "He'll try. But he won't succeed. I've been in this game a lot longer than that boy. I won't let you do this. You don't have a choice." He nodded to one of his men. "Keep her here. When Chen comes for her, and he will, we'll be ready." He left, and Tiana was alone with 2 guards. She assessed her situation. Her hands were tied behind her back, but not expertly. Her legs were bound to the chair. The guards were armed but looked bored, not particularly alert. Instructor Park's voice echoed in her head. "In a real situation, people underestimate you. Use that." She started working on her bindings. Slowly, carefully. The rope was tight, but she'd learned flexibility training. She could dislocate her thumb if she needed to. It took 20 minutes of agonizing work, but she got her hands free. The guards hadn't noticed, both scrolling on their phones. She waited for the right moment. One of the guards walked closer to check on her. She struck fast, a throat punch that left him gasping, then grabbed his gun and turned it on the second guard. "Don't move," she said. The second guard froze. "Kick your gun over here." He did. "Now untie my legs." Once free, she knocked both guards unconscious and took their phones and weapons. She called Taejun. He answered on the first ring. "Tiana, where are you?" "Warehouse district, I think. East side. Taejun, it's my father. He's behind everything. The attack, the cartel setup, all of it. He's planning to kill you." "Where are you exactly?" She looked around, saw a window, recognized landmarks. "I think The old textile warehouse on 6th Street. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay hidden. Tae-jun, he has at least 20 men here. Maybe more. I don't care if he has 100. I'm coming for you. I love you, she said. I love you too. Stay alive. She hung up and started moving. She'd learned the layout during her escape, and she used that knowledge to navigate the dark warehouse. She could hear men talking, coordinating, preparing for Tae-jun's arrival. She realized with growing horror that this wasn't just a trap for Tae-jun. This was an execution. Her father had positioned snipers, set up kill zones. When Tae-jun arrived, he wouldn't stand a chance, unless she did something about it. She found the electrical panel and killed the lights. The warehouse plunged into darkness and chaos erupted, men shouting, running, confused. In the darkness, Tiana moved like a ghost. She took out 2 more guards, stole their ammo. She sabotaged equipment, created diversions, systematically dismantled her father's perfect trap. When Tae-jun arrived with Danny and 6 of his best men, the warehouse was already in chaos. "What the hell happened?" Danny muttered. "Tiana," Tae-jun said, almost smiling. "She happened." They moved in, and it was a firefight. Tae-jun's men were outnumbered but better trained. The battle was brutal, echoing through the warehouse. Tiana was making her way to another position when she saw him. Tae-jun, separated from his men, with 2 of her father's guards closing in from behind. She didn't think. She just acted. She came out of the shadows, took down the first guard with a perfect disarm and submission hold. The second turned his gun on her, but Tae-jun shot him before he could fire. They stared at each other in the dim emergency lighting. "You came back for me," she said. "Always," he replied. Then they heard slow clapping. Marcus Jackson emerged from the shadows, gun in hand. Touching. Really. But it ends here. "Dad, don't," Tiana pleaded. "You're not my daughter anymore. You stopped being my daughter when you chose him." He raised his gun, aimed at Tae-jun. Tiana stepped in front of her husband. "Move, Tiana." "No. I will shoot through you if I have to." "Then do it. Because I'm not letting you kill him." Father and daughter stared at each other, and Marcus saw it. She'd changed. She wasn't the scared, compliant girl he'd raised. She was someone new, someone stronger, someone willing to die for what she believed in. His finger tightened on the trigger. The shot rang out. But it wasn't from Marcus's gun. Danny had circled around and put a bullet in Marcus Jackson's shoulder. The gun fell from his hand and he dropped to his knees. "Secure him," Tae-jun ordered. Danny's men moved in, taking Marcus into custody along with the surviving guards. Tae-jun pulled Tiana into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You saved my life," he said into her hair. "You came for me. We're even." He pulled back to look at her. There was blood on her face. Not hers. And her clothes were torn. She'd never looked more beautiful to him. "You're incredible," he said. "Do you know that? 6 months ago, you could barely look me in the eye. Tonight you took apart an entire operation single-handedly." "I had a good teacher," she said, smiling. "Several, actually." He kissed her, and this time it was different. It was a promise. A beginning. Marcus Jackson survived his gunshot wound, but his empire didn't survive his betrayal. The other families in LA didn't tolerate that kind of violation. Breaking an alliance through treachery meant he couldn't be trusted by anyone. Within a month, his organization had been dismantled, his territories absorbed by rivals, his remaining men scattered. He was arrested on federal charges. The FBI had been building a case for years and finally had enough to make it stick. He'd spend the rest of his life in prison. Tiana visited him once, 2 weeks after his arrest. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in his orange jumpsuit. "You came," he said. "Not for you," she said coldly. "For me. I needed to say something. I'm listening. You spent my entire life making me feel worthless. Too fat, too soft, too useless for the family business. You married me off like I was property, never once asking what I wanted. And you know what? I used to think you were right. I used to think I was a disappointment." She leaned forward. "But I'm not. I never was. You were just too blind to see what I was capable of. And now you get to spend the rest of your life knowing that the daughter you underestimated is the one who brought down your entire empire. Tiana, I'm done, Dad. I'm done trying to earn your approval, your love, your respect. I found all of that somewhere else, with someone who actually sees me. She stood to leave. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. She paused. I know you are, but it doesn't change anything. Goodbye, Daddy. She walked out and never looked back. Tae-jun consolidated his power in LA, bringing in allies from other cities, establishing new alliances. But he was changing too. The marriage to Tiana had shown him that power wasn't everything. Connection mattered, trust mattered, love mattered. He started pulling back from the more brutal aspects of the business, delegating more to Danny and his other lieutenants. He spent more time at home, with his wife, building the life they'd accidentally stumbled into. 6 months after the warehouse incident, they renewed their vows. Not for show this time, not for an alliance, but for them. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and trusted family. Tiana wore a white dress that fit her new body. She'd lost 120 pounds total, not through obsession but through health, through strength, through becoming who she was meant to be. But she wasn't skinny. She was strong, curvy, powerful. She looked like a woman who could break you in half if you crossed her, and Tae-jun loved every inch of her. I married you to stop a war, Tae-jun said in his vows, his eyes never leaving hers. I treated you like a contract, like a business deal. I was an idiot, because I didn't see what was right in front of me. A woman who is brilliant, fierce, loyal, and stronger than anyone I've ever known. You transformed yourself, Tiana. Not for me, but for you. And in doing so, you transformed me too. I love you. Not because of what you look like, but because of who you are, my partner, my equal. My everything. Tiana was crying, but she was smiling too. 6 months ago, I would have said you married a fat girl who was nothing special. But I'm not that person anymore. You're right. I did transform. I learned my worth. I learned my strength. I learned that I'm not a bargaining chip or a disappointment or invisible. I'm Tiana Chen, and I'm a force to be reckoned with. And I love you, Tae-jun. Not because you saved me, but because you let me save myself. And then you loved me for it. They kissed as husband and wife for the second time, but this time, it was real. 1 year later, Tiana stood in front of a classroom of 30 second graders at an inner-city elementary school in Koreatown. She'd gotten her teaching credential, and Tae-jun had personally funded an education program at the school. Mrs. Chen, can you tell us another story about Korea? One little girl asked. Tiana smiled. Of course, Angela. Did I tell you about the tiger and the persimmon? The kids chorused, no, and settled in to listen. Teaching was everything she'd dreamed it would be. The kids didn't care that she used to be fat, or that she was married to a crime boss, or that she'd been invisible for most of her life. They just cared that she was kind, patient, and made learning fun. After school, she went to the gym. Her workout routine had become as natural as breathing. She was training for a Krav Maga competition now, had earned her black belt 6 months ago. Instructor Park watched her spar with another student, nodding approvingly. You've come a long way, Tiana. Thanks to you. No, thanks to you. I just showed you the techniques. You did the work. At home, Tae-jun was cooking dinner. He'd learned to cook Korean food from her. And now it was a competition between them who could make better bulgogi. She walked in, sweaty and exhausted, and he pulled her into a kiss despite her protests about being gross. How was school? He asked. Amazing. How was the office? Productive. Danny sealed the deal with the Osaka family. We're expanding into international shipping. Legal shipping? She asked pointedly. Mostly legal, he amended, and she raised an eyebrow. Fine, legitimate shipping. Are you happy? Very. They ate dinner together, talking about their days like a normal married couple. Which, in a way, they were. They just happened to have a more complicated backstory than most. Later that night, lying in bed, Tiana thought about how far she'd come. From the scared, invisible woman who'd walked down the aisle to a man who didn't want her. To this. To strength. To confidence. To love. "What are you thinking about?" Taejun asked, running his fingers through her hair. "About how you married a fat girl to stop a gang war." He smiled. "I married a woman I didn't know to end a war. But I fell in love with the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met." "Still shocked by my transformation?" "Every single day," he said honestly. "But not because you lost weight, because you found yourself. That's the real transformation. Everything else was just physical." She kissed him. "I love you. I love you too." And in that moment, Tiana understood something fundamental. Her transformation had never been about becoming someone new. It had been about becoming who she was always meant to be. The strength was always there. She just needed to find it. And find it she did.